Hello, my name is Kareem Bell, and the title of my presentation is An Historical Analysis of the Effects of Transformational Leadership, Dr. Leslie Pinckney Hill and the Creation of a Sense of Community Among Black Supporters of the Westchester Community Center. This is my contact information and a recent picture. The Westchester Community Center was the first organization of its kind in Westchester. There were churches and local organizations that had events, but the first public one for all blacks of Westchester to enjoy occurred in Westchester with the community center. What I consider a main problem that I wanted to study was that there's no historical accounts from people that actually went to the center as a child in the center's records or anywhere else. So I wanted to capture that in the form of oral histories. Also, the center doesn't have an official archive, so a lot of the information about the center from the past is in boxes and not organized in a way where people can access it. Finally, the researcher's opinion that Hill's leadership and Hill's memory is starting to become forgotten in Westchester, and so the one goal I had was to make sure people knew about his story. I would like to determine if Hill's leadership is transformational and if he was responsible for creating a sense of community among people in Westchester. I used 4 operational definitions for my study, and the first is transformational leadership, which occurs when something significant happens in a community or organization where there's a metamorphosis of sorts, where something becomes bigger and better and greater than it was previously. Also, I use sense of community, which is a feeling of mattering and belonging and being part of an organization. Also, the Westchester Community Center, the organization that was established in 1918, that's still in existence to this day because of Dr. Hill. And also, when we're talking about black people, I use black people instead of African Americans for my study because that's how the researcher feels most people in Westchester identify themselves. About Dr. Hill, he was born in 1880 in Lynchburg, Virginia. He went to school in Lynchburg and also East Orange, New Jersey for high school, where his potential was observed and realized by the principal and teachers in the school, and they recommended that he go to Harvard. He was the class of 1903 in Harvard, and he gave the valedictory speech, and in 1904 he received his master's from Harvard. From there, he worked at several institutions, Tuskegee Institute, the Manassas Industrial Institute, and in 1913 went to Cheney Teachers Training School. He met his wife Jane while at Tuskegee, and they had several daughters together. And in 1914 is when he met with members in Westchester about the creation of a community center. So basically, they want to have a colored YMCA in town because there's no other opportunities for blacks to enjoy themselves publicly in Westchester until Hill came up with this idea when he met with these people and created the center a few years later. I have a qualitative research design. I've used 2 questions, which you saw, and 2 theoretical frameworks, which are transformational leadership and sense of community. I also spent a lot of time at the Chester County Historical Society reviewing newspapers and microfilm and ephemeral data, which is basically tickets. It could be programs, flyers, membership cards, anything that people donated to the Historical Society was put in this ephemeral file. Also at Cheney University, at the library in Hill's name, there's his collection of papers over the time he spent at Cheney. I collected oral histories from senior citizens. The youngest was 69, the oldest was 101. I did this using my phone and an app called Rev, which I highly recommend. It records your oral history or records your interview session, and then you can get the whole interview transcribed for you in less than 2 days. Also, I used Dr. Hill's dissertation by Suleiman Clark, who was a Cheney student and then went to Harvard himself, who wrote about the educational philosophy of Dr. Hill. So far, I'm still working on my dissertation. I'm working on chapters 4 and 5. I've learned that Hill is a transformational leader and that he has created a legacy where people have a loving and fondness and they feel like they're a member of the center to this day. The work he did at Cheney and Westchester was phenomenal, and how he motivated and galvanized people that didn't really see a need for the center and created it into something that later was called the Lighthouse of the East End. It was just amazing. And also the oral histories I have collected, depending on where you lived, if you lived in the East End, the center was the focal part of your life. It was where you went when you weren't home. For people on the west end of Westchester, especially back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, across town on the west end is considered very far away. Like sometimes people go over on their bikes or walk or get driven over, but the level of involvement is not the same as if you lived in the east end because it was in your neighborhood. But everyone I've interviewed has a fondness and respect for the center and feel like they're a member, even if they weren't an active member, just by the virtue of their color and just the feeling that they got when they went to the center. They feel like they're a part of it and it's a part of them. Finally, I've included some pictures of the center for you to review. On the right is what the building first looked like in 1934, and then since then, in the 60s, there's additions added to the center. So that's the rest of the pictures. Here are some pictures of Leslie Pinckney Hill in various stages of his time at Cheney. And finally, in 2004, the name of the center was changed from the Westchester Community Center to the Melton Center. So that's the name you see in this mural that was dedicated last August. In the top left-hand corner is Leslie Pinckney Hill, a painting rendered of him. In the center is Charles Melton, who was a disciple of Leslie Pinckney Hill and took over as executive secretary of the center after Hill's passing. And then in the bottom right is Bertha Williams. And then in the center is the person that created the painting. And that's my presentation. Thank you for your time.